What's up, guys? Toad back with you of a 3-1 night, although unfortunately the one loss was the money line play that I paid more for in Grand Canyon. Sometimes you don't want to buck Ken Palm, man, although a lot of times the odds makers are factoring in some things that Ken Palm is not, because his, after all, even though his power ratings are awesome, they're still computer generated, so the market kind of tells you more in some ways because that's where all the information is being factored in, but you have to try to weigh both, which is kind of difficult when there's a huge disparity between the two. So I didn't like the laying the points in that one, but I did like the situation. I thought Grand Canyon would win the game. It was a close game, and then they started playing poorly in the second half, and maybe Arizona State's better than the market is indicating that they are right now, possibly. I mean, Ken Palm does have them higher. Ken Palm's rankings are shuffling all over the place early on, though, which I will mention in one of these college basketball games I'm going to talk about in a minute. And then, of course, 3-0 sweep of the other three plays that I had with Philadelphia Flyers winning on the money line. I think that game went into overtime, but underdog money line overtime win out. Yeah, let's go. At least they play the game to overtime. You know, you at least have value there, and they were able to get there. Tampa Bay Lightning beat the seemingly invulnerable Winnipeg Jets, so I called that one too. Got that one right. And then the Utah Jazz outright wins. So they hit on the money line. I put I think I put 10% of that bet on the money line too. So the Utah Jazz hit. It looked like they were going to blow the game. I mean, they're winning by double digits late in the game, blew the whole thing, and they actually fell behind by a couple points. I think the cover was never in doubt, but the money line, they almost blew it, and they were still able to win against the returning champ Dallas Mavs. Hell yeah. All right, let's get into college basketball for today. I'm going to see, I always say I'm going to try to do this faster. We'll see if I actually can. I'm going to try to just hit some of the bigger games on the board here and some of the games that I'm actually playing, obviously. And there aren't really any situations that I see necessarily that I'm not playing. So Virginia and Villanova, it's not really necessarily a huge game, but it's an interesting game between two teams that dramatically like to slow the pace down. So I don't know what the total is in this game. It's down to 129.5 from 131. Expecting very low scoring in that one with two grinding teams here. Virginia, they're 2-0 to start the season, but they played two easy teams, Campbell and Coppin State, and they do have Tennessee up next, but I don't think they're going to overlook Villanova, man. And this is in the Hall of Fame series, early season tournament, I guess, or round robin or whatever this is in Baltimore. So it's actually, is it closer to Virginia, to where Virginia is located? I don't even know. It's fairly close by to both of these teams, really. So it's not really a semi-home one way or the other. It's a neutral site game. Virginia, of course, Tony Bennett, not the singer, because he just died recently, so both of them have left us recently. Tony Bennett kind of just stepped down in a shocking manner because he's not really that old, and he just left during the offseason. The coach of Virginia who'd been there for so long. I don't know what that's about, but that could mean that Virginia's going through some growing pains here to try to adjust to a new system with a new coach there. So that might be the case. Virginia was down last year at the very least. They barely made it into the tournament and had an embarrassing performance in the first four, I think, against Colorado State, if I remember correctly. That was bad, but I don't know if that's the reason he stepped down, or if there were I don't know if there were some cheating allegations that were going to come out or something like that. I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but whatever. Virginia, yeah, so I don't think they're going to overlook a game like this against Villanova. I don't think either team will. Virginia's 2-0. Villanova's 2-2, but I think Villanova's probably being underrated right now because they have two losses as favorites against Columbia, who looks like they're maybe better than we thought that they might be. They might be one of the better teams in the Ivy this year. Unclear at this moment. Villanova, I mean, they took care of business against the two worst teams, Lafayette and NJIT, but then they lost at St. Joe's in their most recent game. But we know what happens, man. And Villanova, they lost to St. Joe's last year, too, in a similar game. They always play early in the season. It's a Philadelphia rivalry, and St. Joe's always gets up for that game, man, especially when Villanova's not a really good team, and Villanova's kind of mediocre right now. St. Joe's is going to step it up to play their bigger in-city brother there, and they did, and they won the game as a home underdog there. I think that puts Villanova in a bounce-back spot, and Villanova didn't play particularly well in this game. There wasn't really anything statistically that stands out, although Villanova out-rebounded St. Joe's by a lot. They didn't shoot particularly well. So maybe they'll bounce back in that way too. And they did turn the ball over too much. I actually like Villanova in this game because of that at home, because of the fact they have 2 losses. They're up against an undefeated Virginia team. The public might come in and look at this and think there's going to be value taking the points with Virginia in this one. And I obviously am saying that I don't really agree with that. Although Villanova is down from 5.5 to 5, I would look to lay it with Villanova in this one just because I think the 2-2 start and the fact that they lost to a couple of those inferior teams makes them look worse than they actually are. KenPom, I think, has the number around the same. The one thing that is an issue, though, is this is going to be such a low-scoring game, probably with 2 of the slowest-paced teams in the country, that it makes it harder to cover a number as a favorite. So I will throw that out there. Alabama and Purdue, I'll talk about that one. I'm going to try to skip some of these games. Like Florida State are playing. It's a rivalry. I don't think there's a whole lot to say about that. Florida's the better team. They're favored. Up from 5 to 6. Not much to say about that. Other than I think Florida does play faster than Florida State does, and that's at Florida State. So Florida State might try to slow the game down to some extent. I'm actually not even 100% sure if I'm right about that. Alabama-Purdue is maybe the biggest game on tap tonight. It's on Peacock, unfortunately, because the Big Ten has these that Peacock contract now. Peacock has a lot of their games, which I do actually have Peacock. This is number 2 against number 13, but I think these rankings are a little bit off, man. Alabama's coming off a nice win over McNeese, and we know McNeese is a very good Southland team, but they're not necessarily going to be that competitive with the elite teams in college basketball, but they still came within 8 against Alabama on the road here, so that's not a bad performance from them. Alabama was blowing them out, though, and I think Alabama just kind of eased up and took their foot off the gas there, and McNeese kind of came back into the game. McNeese really did not shoot well in that game either. Alabama, I think that the rankings are just not indicative of what these teams actually are. I think Alabama is probably not the second best team in the country right now. I mean, KenPom, I think, has them probably around 10th or so. And I think Purdue maybe around accurately rated, but the gap between these two teams is not as much as what the rankings would lead you to believe. Purdue, on the other hand, they're now getting points at home. They're coming off kind of an ugly game against Yale, where they didn't play that well against Yale, though they did have the lead the whole time. They were up double digits. I think Purdue, just like Alabama did, I think Purdue probably kind of eased up off the gas pedal there at the end as well. But Yale's not that bad a team. One of the better teams in the Ivy. They made the tournament last year, which was kind of surprising, but they weren't one of the bad Ivy teams, really. I mean, they were one of the top ones still. Just not as good as Princeton. Purdue shot 47.8% from the 3, though, so that's kind of an outlier. Maybe not going to happen again, but Purdue is known for jacking up threes, man, and they are one of the better three-point shooting teams in the country. I think they do have some of those young guards that they have. I think are coming back, Purdue, for like their 3rd year. So even though Purdue lost Zach Edey, they still have some of their big talent from last year, I'm pretty sure, is still back for Purdue. So I think Purdue might be a little bit undervalued here, so I would lean to taking the points with Purdue in this one. I'm not doing it, but Alabama's flipped from a 1.5-point dog to a 2.5-point favorite, teetering on 3. I think it's gone too far in that direction. KenPom has, I think, Purdue actually winning this game by 1 or 2, because he has Purdue only the slightly lesser of the two teams in his rankings. So I think the reality is probably somewhere in the middle, but it looks like there's value taking the points with Purdue, and this is a huge pacing contrast, as you're going to get a lot with some of these like SEC teams that are known for wanting to run up and down the court, which is weird because SEC in football is known for physical defense. In basketball, they're known for really fast-paced play in a lot of cases. And the Big Ten is known for these grinding, slow-down defenses, and to some extent the Big East, like Villanova. But Purdue, they're one of the slowest-paced teams in the country as well, and Alabama's one of the fastest. So this is a huge contrast in styles, and a lot of times the home team will win out in the contrast of styles, and it is easier to slow the pace down anyway. So Purdue may be able to grab control of the pace of this game, slow it down, and play it at their style, and that might help Purdue as well, especially getting points at home. So I do like Purdue in that one slightly, to some extent there. What else we got on this slate here for men's college basketball? I think I was just going to mention Marist because they're coming off a nice upset win over Richmond. So is that going to put them in a letdown against Army? I don't really know, but I think Army, I don't know what Army did in the last game. Marist is up from 4 to 5, though. So I don't know. Would you really want to take the points with Army, who's not a very good basketball team either? I don't know. Marist actually played decently last year. They came from out of nowhere and were one of the better MAAC teams. Army hasn't done a whole lot this year either. They're coming off some win over some cupcake against Mount St. Mary, but not the Mount St. Mary's that's in Division I. So, just some thoughts on that game really quickly. Loyola, Chicago, and Princeton, I think is just kind of, it should be probably a good game, but I don't really know what else to say about that. Princeton's down from 4 to 2.5, though, so the line moving in the direction of Loyola in this one. And I forget, Ken Baum, I think, has these teams pretty close, and I forget which team he actually has as the better team. The odds makers telling you Loyola is a slightly better team. They really have not been challenged yet this year as far as their schedule. They've had an easy schedule so far. Princeton has faced at least more, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. They faced a more difficult schedule, at least with Iona's a decent team. And Duquesne, I don't think they're that good, even though they made the tournament last year. But Princeton's coming off a game where Northeastern played them pretty well. And Princeton, they just didn't have the best game, really, in this game. Princeton was a big favorite, 7.5-point favorite, and they didn't play that well. Maybe they were even looking ahead to this game a little bit against a better Loyola team. So Princeton, may actually be a slight lean in that one for that reason, and they're getting a cheaper price now because the line has moved down a little bit there. What else? And then let's get to some of my plays, actually, as I'm going through this slate here, because I almost skipped them, but I'm just going to try to go in order here. First play is UNC-Wilmington minus 8.5. I think Ken Baum has this around 8. The line has moved down on Wilmington, but I'm just going to take more value here. It's down from 10 to 8.5. I don't love when the line moves against me, but I'm not entirely sure why the line move has happened because UNC-Wilmington, they're the better team. It's not really going to be that much of a secret looking at the team's records. You got a 2-0 team against a 1-3 team, so I think people are going to realize that UNC-Wilmington's the better team. UNC-Wilmington, they're coming off a nice win, getting their first Division I win where they did actually have to come back against Georgia Southern, who I don't think is that bad this year, but UNC-Wilmington really didn't shoot well, 20% from three-point range. They got outshot percentage-wise. That's kind of an outlier, but they dominated the boards in this game. They were really the better team in the game in that one, and they were a favorite of 5.5, so they covered eventually, but they didn't play the greatest game. They do have Kansas up next, but I think coming off a game like that, I don't think they're going to be necessarily looking ahead, even though it looks like it could be a look-ahead spot for them. But look at what South Carolina Upstate is coming off of, man. They face a very difficult schedule. They've lost all of their Division I games have been losses, but they were to NC State, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest. So, yeah, that does mean that they're battle-tested, but look at this game against Wake Forest, man. They were a 29.5-point favorite is what the game went off as, and they played them to within 5 points. They were winning the game in the middle of the second half. The game was, I think, tied or within 1 point in the final minute of the game, so they had a chance to pull off that upset. When you do that, man, and Wake Forest didn't shoot particularly well from three-point range in that one, kind of an outlier there, 26.9%. But when you play a game that close as a massive underdog like that, it's really difficult to get back up off the mat after this minute. UNC-Wilmington, as the odds makers are telling you, they are the significantly better team here. So South Carolina Upstate, they come into a game like this off of a huge effort like that. Even though they know they're an underdog again here, they just might not really have much energy left in this game, man. So that's kind of what I'm looking for here, even though this is going to be their first Division I game at home. I think they did play that Division II team or whatever at home this year, so it's not technically their home opener. I like UNC-Wilmington in that one. They're just the better team. I think the spot is just too bad for USC Upstate. Ken Baum has UNC-Wilmington ranked in the 170s, and SC Upstate is one of the worst teams in the entire country in Division I, at least down at 330 something. So Wilmington is the way better team, and there isn't a huge pacing contrast in this game either, a huge pacing collision. So that's where we're going there. Next up, let me see. I think I closed my college basketball tab. No, it's not what I wanted to do. Marquette at Maryland. I'm going to play Maryland in this one. I'm jumping right into my plays here, man, as I'm going in order here on the board here. This is one of those games where, again, just like last year, man, these home favorites that were unranked teams against ranked road opponents played well last year, and I'm going with it in this one, Maryland against Marquette. I'm going to lay the 1.5. I think the rankings are not totally indicative of what the disparity is between these two teams. Yes, Marquette is the better team, as the odds makers are telling you, but it's not that significant. The odds makers are telling you they're only a couple points better. Ken Palm actually has Maryland, I think, winning this game by 3 points, so there is value on this one if you look at Ken Palm as well. Marquette, they have not really been tested yet. Beating Stony Brook, George Mason, and Central Michigan. I mean, they've taken care of business, fine, but now they have to face their first true road game, going out to face Maryland, not an easy place to play. And up next in a few days, they have Purdue, which is a big game, man. Marquette against Purdue. And remember, Marquette doesn't have Kolek anymore, so their star player they had last year isn't there. So I don't know if their ranking is a little bit too high right now for what they actually are, potentially, because I think Ken Palm probably has Marquette down in the 20s, I think, and Maryland in like the 30s, I think, or maybe it might even be closer than that. But Maryland, both of these teams are actually sitting at 3-0 right now. Maryland also has faced a very easy schedule so far, but they've annihilated all of these opponents, man. Manhattan, Mount St. Mary's, the Mount St. Mary's I just mentioned, and Florida A&M. I mean, not opponents that you're really going to even take seriously, but Maryland has just wiped them off the map, basically. In every one of these games, Maryland is playing really well. This Maryland team is not a bad team, and now they get their biggest game of the season so far, hosting Marquette, whereas Marquette might have a little bit of that look ahead to a ranked Purdue team, like I said, and Maryland's not ranked, and they have a ranked Marquette team coming into their place. I like Maryland in this one, and I haven't looked at the schedule as far as, like, what happened last season. Like, I don't know if there's any revenge motive, although I don't think it matters that much. I think revenge is a bit overrated here. I don't even think they played Marquette last year because Marquette's in the Big East and Maryland is in the Big Ten. So give me Maryland in that one. It's, again, one of those situations that was a big moneymaker for most of the season last year with the unranked home favorite against the ranked road opponent, because the public's usually going to be coming in on the other side of that one, thinking that there's value taking the road ranked team as the underdog. Maryland's sitting at 1.5. The line hasn't moved. So that's where I'm going in that one. And then, Georgia Tech is a rivalry game. So, I'll just point out that game is being played, and Georgia is a favorite of a couple points. They're up from Pick'em to 2. So it looks like some money has come in on Georgia there. Take from that what you will. West Virginia, Pittsburgh, the basketball version of the backyard brawl is also today. Pittsburgh's up from 5.5 to 6.5. They are the better of those two teams. West Virginia hasn't been a great basketball team of late. So, again, take from that what you will. My last play in college basketball before I maybe throw out a couple more tidbits in college basketball is Penn +8. Give me the points with Penn, man. This is a letdown spot for St. Joe's. This is a spot where I think Penn is going to consider themselves to be the little in-state brother here. So St. Joe's is going from being the little brother to being the big brother. And I think this is a sandwich spot, man. They're coming off that nice win over Villanova. And whenever you have the win over Villanova, it's a big win, even though I know St. Joe's, after they played Villanova last year, they did win the next game after they beat Villanova last year. But still, I think it's a letdown spot for them having to play Penn. And then up next week, they have this neutral site game, one of these early season tournaments, I think, against Texas Tech. So they have this game against an Ivy that isn't that good, sandwiched in between a Big East and a Big 12 team, man. So those are bigger step-up games, and they're coming off that nice slight home upset against a Villanova team that tries to grind you down physically. St. Joe's was able to increase the pace of that game a little bit more than what Villanova would like. So St. Joe's coming off of that, man. They're a fast-paced team as well, and they're playing a Penn team that this Penn team is a slower-paced team. And I think this is also the case with Maryland, by the way. I forgot to mention Maryland, and I'd have to look, but I think Maryland is a slower-paced team than who is Maryland even playing in than Marquette. So I think that's another game where Maryland might be the home team trying to slow the pace down and take control of the pace in that game. But I would have to look. But in this game, it's definitely the case. St. Joe's likes to play faster, and Penn likes to slow the game way down. So taking a bunch of points at home with a team that likes to slow the pace down when the road favorite is in a spot where they might overlook that opponent, I think it's a good spot to grab the points with Penn here, man. So that's what I'm doing, even though I think St. Joe's may have beaten Penn last year, but I would have to look because I think all these teams always play each other. Maybe I'm wrong. But Penn is going to be the in-state little brother here. St. Joe's is in a sandwich. And Penn, they're coming off losing to Lafayette, man. So even though they do have Villanova up next, I think this is still a big game for Penn with St. Joe's coming into their place. And Penn was a road favorite against Lafayette. Probably shouldn't have lost this game. They fell behind fairly significantly early on, and they weren't able to come back. But Lafayette was 45% from three-point range in this game. I don't know that that's going to be anything that's really something that can be sustainable. And Penn didn't shoot as well, or they didn't shoot particularly well. They shot maybe lower than what they usually do. So kind of some outlier percentages there factoring into that game. So I like Penn plus the points in that one. Give me that one. Arizona at Wisconsin is another interesting one. Arizona, the 9th-ranked team in the country. I think they are deserving of that. I think they are a top 10 team, but Wisconsin may be a little bit underrated. I think they're hovering kind of around maybe 20-something ranking-wise in KenPom right now, so I think they're maybe being a little bit undervalued here. They're getting points, of course. Arizona's 4.5, laying 4.5 on the road, but this is another one where I would maybe look to take the overlooked, potentially, defensive home dog in this one, and this is another situation where Wisconsin wants to slow the pace way down. Arizona really wants to up-tempo it and run, and they do have Duke up next, even though it's in a week, so potentially a look ahead, and it's Arizona's first true road game here, having to go to the University of Wisconsin, to Madison. And Wisconsin, they played pretty well against some weaker opponents so far, winning every game so far by double digits. And this is going to be their biggest game on the schedule so far, not surrounded by anything bigger either, whereas Arizona might look ahead to Duke. So I lean to taking the points with Wisconsin in that one. I do like Wisconsin plus the points in that one. And then the other ranked matchup is 21 Ohio State at 23 Texas A&M. And I mentioned A&M was overrated, in my opinion, starting the season at 13. They've dropped a little bit, but in KenPom's rankings, they moved up from 60 to 15 or 16 or something. So it's crazy how these KenPom rankings are just massively shifting around. So maybe it's possible you're actually getting a little bit of value here on the A&M side. I mean, this is Ohio State's first true road game at Texas A&M here. Ohio State's looked very good so far, beating Texas and then not having a letdown, though, blowing out Youngstown, which is not something I expected. Texas A&M, after that loss to UCF to start the season, didn't look very good. They've beaten some Texas cupcakes in East Texas A&M, formerly Texas A&M Commerce, and Lamar, and I think they were Texas A&M Commerce when they played this game. They just changed their name. And this is Texas A&M's biggest game, but the real kind of thing here to take a look at is that even though, I know Texas A&M is actually the lower-ranked team, 23rd against 21 Ohio State, but the odds makers are telling you A&M actually is the better team, up from 2.5 to 6.5. I don't know if there are injuries factoring into this, because that line just kind of looks crazy to me, man. I don't even think KenPom has the line that high. I think he probably would have Texas A&M maybe in the range of 4 or 5. 6.5 just looks crazy. So if you like Texas A&M, I think you missed the boat. I mean, these early season college basketball games move all over the place, and the public doesn't get involved as much in these games because they're not paying as much attention to college basketball until it really gets going. But the line is at least telling you something, that Texas A&M probably is actually the better team, but you're not getting much value at this point if you do want to play that side. All right. Let's change gears here and let's get into NBA, where I only have one play in the NBA, and I don't know if many of these games are even really that worth talking about. I do probably lean to the Knicks because the Knicks are coming off this ugly upset loss and that dropped them below 500 again to Chicago at home. So I think they're going to be in a pissed mood, even though it is their third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days. It is their second game back home, at least, after a really ugly loss there. I think they're going to just hammer Brooklyn in this game. I mean, the Knicks are only a half point better than Brooklyn in the standings right now. Brooklyn's coming off another step-up game, at least against Boston, but they got blown out this time. They are starting a road trip, so I don't actually want to play the Knicks here, but I do expect the Knicks to be in a bounce-back spot, and they're the better team, so I expect them to overcome the Nets here. Knicks are down from 11 to 9.5, so you're getting a little bit more value if you do like them. 62% of the tickets on them, and 71% of the cash over on the other side, or 71% of the tickets, on the Nets, with 62% of the cash on Cleveland. So the line is indicating on the Cleveland side. Nuggets, Pelicans, this is a weird one. I think Jokic seems to be expected not to be playing in this game, so that's why I'm pointing out this line here. Nuggets down from 10 to 4.5. 91% of tickets, 94% of the cash on them. It is possible the line has moved too far against the Nuggets. It might put the Nuggets in a bit of an injured player theory spot if Jokic is indeed not going to play in this game, but they're coming off a huge win against Dallas, the Western Conference champs from last year, so they could also be in a letdown spot, but they are starting a road trip, and if Jokic is indeed injured, you might see Denver step this game up a little bit in his stead. So this line seems to be indicating to me that Jokic is not going to be playing in this game. And Pelicans have a bunch of injuries. Zion is still out. I think McCollum, it looks like he's slated to maybe return tomorrow. Lots of injuries going on in this game, man. So something to take notice of there. And that's, I think, one of those in-season tournament games, too. I hate that. I hate the in-season tournament. Yeah, the NBA Cup is now what it's called. Give me a break, man. Just stop it with this. I don't think it really motivates teams really one way or the other, man. I don't even factor it into my handicapping, as I said. I think it's just stupid. And the way that I handicap anyway, like the lesser team is going to tend to bring it against the better team anyway. So Suns Thunder is also just a huge game today. I'll point out Thunder up from 7 to 7.5. 56% of tickets on them and 67% of the cash on them. So the odds makers, the market, is kind of indicating on the OKC side in this one. I don't think it's a particularly great spot for either team, although both teams are going to be focused. Well, actually, it's a fine spot for OKC. Never mind. I forgot what I saw when I looked at this. They do have it's potentially a look ahead to Dallas, but I don't think they're going to look ahead to Dallas, even though I think Dallas was the team that eliminated OKC last year. So maybe that's slightly a look ahead because it would be playoff revenge, which is the only type of revenge that does matter. But they're not going to overlook Kevin Durant and this Phoenix Suns team that's been good, man. Although I don't know if Durant is actually back yet because he's been injured. So you have to take that into account too. Take a look and make sure that Durant is playing, and he might not be because Oklahoma City's favored by so much. But Phoenix is actually in a decent bounce back spot too, losing again to Sacramento, who seems to have their number. Even though Phoenix, I think, has revenge up next too against Minnesota. I think Minnesota was the team that eliminated Phoenix last year. So it's crazy. Both of these teams have a revenge look ahead. But I don't think either team's going to overlook each other in this game. And this is a big matchup. Looks like Durant is still out. He's out for the next 11 days, it looks like. Look at this. This injury report is crazy, dude. Bradley Beal looks like he might be still out. Nurkic may come back in this game. And Grayson Allen. Just massive injuries all over the place here. This is wild, dude. A lot of injuries to take into account in the NBA, man. It's just like you really got to be aware of what's going on here in the NBA. As far as these injuries are concerned, I don't think I've ever seen this many injuries this early on in the NBA, to be honest. This is insane. And then I thought there was one game where both teams are in a bad spot. Maybe it's Memphis Golden State. I don't even know. It's not anything that I really want to get involved in, but I was just going to point it out. Yeah, so Golden State's coming off a couple of big games, man. They played Boston, Cleveland, Oklahoma City, and Dallas all in a row. A bunch of those games on the road, and then returned home. Didn't suffer the return home distraction spot. Beat Dallas, the returning Western Conference champs, and now they have Memphis. So it does look like a bad spot for Golden State. So I'm thinking maybe I want to take the points with Memphis here. But then I look at Memphis. Well, Memphis is coming off a loss, though. Actually, maybe I do like the Memphis side here. They're coming off a loss to L.A., to the Lakers. That was a big game, though. Kind of. But Memphis, yeah, they were a big 7.5-point underdog, and they did cover in this game. But I don't know. Am I going to add a play on the fly? Occasionally I will do this. Warriors, 68% of tickets, 86% of the cash. It doesn't look like a good spot for the Warriors, though, to me at all, really. Man, what about the injury situation here? I don't know what the injury situation might be in this game either. You really got to, take a look at this, man. Ja Morant is out. Yeah, all right. I think I'm just going to stay away from this, but, man, so Miranda's been out for a while now, so, it's not really an injured player theory spot or anything like that at this point. I think he's been out for many games at this point. Jackson Jr. has really played well in his absence there, but I'll just stay away from it. But my one play that I do have in the NBA, I'll give it to you in a second. What's up, Nate? The sound is out. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully I got this right, man. Yeah, the Stars. Dude, my Bruins cannot beat Dallas, man. I don't know what the deal is with that, but I thought they were in a better spot to bounce back. I didn't play the game, obviously. My hockey plays both nailed it last night. Bruins Oh, man, they are so bad. They're really bad this year. All right, let's get to my NBA play. I have an NHL play and I have to talk college football. This is bad. Washington +9. I'm going against the market read right now, but this is a situational play. I know how ugly it is. The Hawks are up from 7 to 9, 58% of tickets, 95% of the cash on the Hawks. I mean, I looked at the injury status here, and it didn't look like there were really any major injuries here, but the cash looks like it's coming in and moving the line towards the Atlanta side. I just don't get it. I mean, we don't have any really significant injuries here in this game necessarily. I mean, Bogdanovich is probably the best injured player going on here. He's been injured for a while. This Hawk team, I just don't think they're very good, man. This is a play against them. They're 5-7. I mean, people like Trae Young. They remember Atlanta being like a playoff team the last few years, but I think they're like borderline playoff, man. But they have not been that good this year, and they're coming off beating Boston. I mean, that's a huge win, beating probably still the best team in the NBA, the returning champs. You go into their house and beat them. I think that puts you in a letdown spot. Even if you do have 2 days off, I would like it better if it was a sandwich, but they have this one weird home game before they have to go back out on the road to the Pacific Coast. I don't like it, even though the one thing that might focus them is that Washington has beaten them twice this year, but is that going to be enough to focus them coming off a monster win, like win of the season over Boston? And not only that, but it was a game where they had a furious comeback. Boston was kind of running them out of the building in the second half, and as the Celtics kind of do sometimes, the Celtics took their foot off the gas and wound up losing the game, but still, that puts Atlanta in a major letdown spot. And looking at Atlanta, you need them to win by 9 points. They've covered that number one time this entire season against the Pelicans on the road, a very injured Pelicans team. They have not won by more than, 5, I think, in any of these, 5 in any of these other games. Look at their wins, man. 4-5 against Brooklyn and Charlotte by 4 and 5. New York by 5, and it's still a good win against New York, and then Boston by 1. So Atlanta's only covered a spread like this. They've only won by more than 5 points one time this entire season against one of the most injured teams in basketball. And then looking at Washington, I mean, they're just looking for wins, in my opinion, man. I think this is also one of these group play games, these cup games. At Washington, they're coming off another loss. They're trying to break a loss streak here, man. This is their last game of the road trip, and I think they want to do something here, like try to salvage the last game of the road trip. So I think they're going to be focused just for that reason, just to try to salvage the road trip. They've been losing all these games. Washington, they have 2 wins on the season, and as I mentioned, both of them are against this Atlanta team. So maybe Washington just has a matchup edge or something. But they didn't play that well in either of these games, though, necessarily. I mean, I think, Washington just kind of shot out of their minds in this game kind of unsustainably, but it was still a pretty close game, and that's all you really need is to have this be a close game this time. And then in the first of the 2 games, I think Washington made a big comeback in this game, if I remember correctly. Washington was losing a lot of this game, so Atlanta did have the upper edge in this game, too. Washington did shoot kind of an outlier 3-point percentage in that game, too. So take from all that what you will, but I like the spot as being a spot to play against the Atlanta Hawks in that one. What's up, Zach? The Thunder, they're definitely good this season. I think they're the best team in the Western Conference and the second best team in the NBA, as I keep saying. Let's go to NHL before I get out of here. I don't even know if there's anything I'm going to talk about in NHL besides the game that I'm actually going to play. Although I would say Detroit-Anaheim, I will just point out that I think Anaheim is in kind of a bad spot. You'd have to lay a road favorite price with Detroit, though. Anaheim, they just came really close to Vegas, although they were down 3-1 in the final minute, so it wasn't as close as maybe it looked. And they do have Dallas up next, so it looks kind of sandwich-y maybe. Will they overlook a decent Detroit Red Wings team? I don't know. Red Wings coming off a nice overtime win, though, over Pittsburgh as well, but maybe not that significant because Pittsburgh hasn't been playing that well. So if you do like Detroit, you got to lay a price, minus 140. They have 70% of tickets, 99% of the cash. The game I'm playing is Calgary, plus 110. I'm going to play the Flames in this one. I think this is a good situational spot. The line's already moving. Nashville's down from minus 130 to minus 118. 64% of the tickets on Calgary kind of surprises me, but Nashville's record is not very good. So maybe that's part of the reason why, but 96% of the cash on Calgary. The indicators make it look to me like the money is indeed coming in on the Calgary side in this one, and I think it's justified. this is a tough spot for Nashville, man. This is a sandwich spot. They just played Colorado in elevation and then Edmonton in overtime. And Edmonton was last night. So now they're on a back-to-back off of that. It doesn't even say who their goalie was. Do they play Saros in this game, or is he going to play in this game? I don't even know. Let me see. It was Picard for Edmonton and Nashville. Let me see. Saros plays most of their games. It's not even listed who their goalie was. Oh, maybe they just didn't play a goalie. So, no, I have no idea. It doesn't even say who their goalie was in this game. So that's something to look at, I guess, because I don't know if it's going to be Saros in this game or not, but I don't even really care. I mean, Saros is obviously their best goalie, but I don't care if it's him or not in net here. I mean, when you're coming off a huge game like this, 2 huge games in a row going into overtime in both of them, this game against Edmonton, I mean, that's just crazy, dude. I don't think you're in a good spot coming off of that. I mean, that's a huge step-up game, and they do have Vancouver up next, too. And in between these two, they have this Calgary game, which is the lesser of all these opponents. I think Nashville might not have a whole lot left in the tank here, man, and it's on a back-to-back. And meanwhile, Calgary does still have a winning record, though, but they've been playing worse hockey since their hot start. But their hot start, well, actually, it wasn't against necessarily bad teams. They beat Vancouver and Edmonton in there and played Chicago and Philadelphia, who aren't as good. Calgary's coming off a loss to Vancouver here, but they've had 2 days off. They're coming back home, and they really don't have that much to look ahead to. I don't think they're going to look ahead to the Islanders, so I think they are going to be focused on this game against Nashville. The rest spot is way better for Calgary here. The spot is way more difficult for Nashville coming off those games like that, and I think it is a sandwich. So give me Calgary plus money at home there, plus 110. My hockey has been good. It was Wedgwood last night. All right, so it will be Saros in this game, but I still think the spot is correct to fade Nashville in this game, and I still think that at the very least, after a game like that last night, their skaters are going to be tired in this game, man, even if Saros is going to be rested. I like the Calgary side. My hockey has been nice so far this season, man. I think I'm like, I don't know what, I'd have to go back and look at my record, but with those 2 wins last night, my hockey record is definitely good this year. My college basketball is bad. My NBA is above 500 now. NHL way above 500, and college basketball is 4-7-1, I think. So college basketball, we really need to turn it around, especially with these 3 plays. Let's do college football, and then I'll get out of here. We're doing 4 games today. I'm not playing any of these, but Wyoming at Colorado State. The earliest game is at 8 p.m. Colorado State's down from 10.5 to 9.5. They're public. 82% of tickets, 61% of the cash. I agree with this move on the Wyoming side, and I also agree with the under in this one. Wyoming down from 40, or total down from 46.5 to 46.5. Juice to the under. 68% of the tickets on the over, but 79% of the cash on the under. Both of these teams run the football, and that's basically what they do. So I think the under does make sense in this game. Both offenses can't do a whole lot, but I don't really want to play the under here because Wyoming, at the very least, has switched quarterbacks to this guy Anderson, and they've been better with him in there, but they did play horrible defenses in Utah State and New Mexico, so I don't know if there's that much to take away from that, but Anderson does look better than Svoboda as far as their quarterbacks are concerned. Wyoming, they do have 2 huge games up next in Boise State and Washington State, but I think playing a primetime game like this, isolated TV game on CBS Sports, Wyoming doesn't get too many of those games. I think they're going to be focused just because it is a primetime game. They're coming off a bye, so they have extra rest here. They went into the bye on a nice note, though, beating New Mexico, but I don't think that that's going to put them in, like, I don't think they're going to, like, that bye is going to, like, stop momentum or anything like that. I think getting that win to break that loss streak is good. They know they're not making a bowl here, so the things they have left to play for are just stepping up in primetime games and against big opponents. So I actually think maybe they have reason to be focused in all of their remaining games. Colorado State might have less of a reason to show up in this game, even though it is primetime. They don't get too many of these primetime games, so they might still show up for that reason because they don't want to get embarrassed on a national stage. They actually have the same amount of rest, so never mind. But I think that rest is going to hurt Colorado State more because they went into that rest on a win streak, so that might disrupt their winning momentum, man. So I don't like that for Colorado State. The fact that their momentum is going to get disrupted by that. And that win against Nevada, that was their 6th win, so they're bowl eligible now, man. And I think that was basically their goal this season. I don't think they expected any more than that. They're bowl eligible now, and a lot of times when you see teams like that hit that goal that they wanted to, they tend to not show up as focused in the next game. That might be the case here with Colorado State. So I like the Wyoming side in that one as far as how to play that game, and slightly into the under as well. North Texas at UTSA. This is a nice Texas battle here, I guess. North Texas down from 1.5 to 1. 60% of the tickets coming in on North Texas. Public's going to come in on North Texas because they have the better offense. Public likes those teams that can score a lot. UTSA may be flying a little bit under the radar, though, and they got 57% of the cash on them, and I think maybe there are reasons to think that UTSA is actually the better defense here. The total is insane, up from 71.5 to 72.5 to the over. Juice to the over. 74% of the tickets, 90% of the cash on the over. I'm not going to play this game to go over, even though I know I like to say that when you have totals that are this extraordinarily high, the odds makers are telling you this is going to be a high-scoring game, and you tend to want to actually look to play the over because it looks actually even difficult to play the over in this one. But in this game, I actually don't like it as much. I wouldn't play the under, but UTSA actually at least defends the run well. Their defense actually isn't maybe as bad as it may seem, but North Texas, they throw the ball mostly on offense. Both of these teams throw the ball, and UTSA is not good at defending against the pass, so North Texas just airs it out, and they're able to do that. North Texas may do that, so I'm not going to play anything on the total here. I'm not playing any of these games, but just pointing out all these different ways to look at these games. North Texas is coming off their most difficult games of the season, except for Texas Tech. All their most difficult opponents they lost to: Texas Tech, Memphis, Tulane, and Army. So they have not done well against the better opponents they've faced, but lucky for them, UTSA is not one of the better opponents that they're facing, and North Texas does still need a 6th win, which they're going to get it probably, playing East Carolina at home and then Temple. So they're going to get it at some point, but sitting at 5 wins, maybe that'll focus them. But they're coming off a tough game against Army, man, where that was a way lower scoring game than what I thought it was going to be. And North Texas was in that game down 7-3 in the 4th quarter. So they were almost able to pull off a win over a ranked Army team there. So that was a big game, and short turnaround time coming from Saturday to Friday here. So North Texas might be in the worst spot for that reason. And like I said, they don't necessarily need to win this game to become bowl eligible. It's still likely they're going to do it with those not very good opponents up last. UTSA, though, they're coming out of a bye, so they are more rested, but they beat Memphis going into the bye, which is definitely a big win. A nice high note there going into the bye there. UTSA has faced a fairly difficult schedule as well, having to face Texas at the very least, and then Memphis. Well, I guess the rest of these opponents weren't very good, so scratch that, I guess. But they beat Memphis and went into the bye on that. They're also a team that entirely throws the ball with McCown, Owen McCown, who's Josh McCown's son there, actually. So UTSA, I mean, they went into that bye on a nice high note, a big win. But I still think they're going to be focused because they're hosting a primetime game on ESPN2 here. So that's a reason for all these teams to be focused tonight still, man. With North Texas coming in there. So slight lean with the market, though, still to the UTSA side, just because I think they're the only one of these two teams that can actually kind of play defense to at least some extent. But North Texas throws the ball, and that's UTSA's defensive weakness, so they probably will still get lit up defensively in this one. But UTSA is also sitting at 4 wins, so they need both of these games, really, because they're probably not going to win on the road at Army. So if they want to get a bowl here, they're going to be paying attention to these games, man, and need to win them. So a little bit more motivation as far as the bowl eligibility standpoint is concerned on the UTSA side. And North Texas coming off the game against Army on shorter rest. It looks like Texas San Antonio maybe the better way to look there. UCLA at Washington, a weird Big Ten matchup that looks like it should be a Pac-12 matchup. Washington up from 4 to 4.5 with juice. 69% of the tickets on them, 70% of the cash on Washington. Line on the total, 47 down to 47, juice to the under. 54% of tickets and 72% of the cash, both on the under. I agree with the under in this one. I mean, both of these teams, by the way, North Texas and UTSA, one of the reasons why the total is so high is they both play like some of the fastest paces in college football. Whereas in this game, UCLA and Washington, especially UCLA, plays a very slow-paced game. So the under might make sense in this game. UCLA, they've turned it on recently, man, but their early season schedule was really difficult. Indiana, LSU, Oregon, Penn State. UCLA, maybe not as bad as we thought they were early on in the season. Losing to Minnesota, I mean, that was just kind of a I mean, that was a spot where I played UCLA, but maybe I shouldn't have because they were off that big game against Penn State. But Minnesota was in a really bad spot there. And then UCLA turned it on. They've won 3 straight games as underdogs, 2 of them on the road. But does that mean they're going to kind of start regressing in the other direction? Maybe. But they're sitting at 4 wins. They want to become bowl eligible. Garbers, their quarterback, has actually been decent. But I think that this game, like I said, they play a slow pace, and Washington is the better rushing team here and the team that I think still has the better defense in this one. And I kind of like Washington in this one slightly. Washington's sitting at 5 wins. They want bowl eligibility as well. And they've faced some bigger opponents more recently, so they looked a little bit better maybe early on. And then they've faced tough opponents, tough spot against Iowa there. I played against Washington in that one. I took Iowa. That was a nice, easy win for me. And then they lost to Indiana. USC beat USC and then lost to Penn State. So Washington's faced some tough recent opponents, but they're coming off a blowout against Penn State. So I think maybe that'll focus them, even though it was a big game, just because they got blown out. But the other reason why I really lean to the Washington side here is they need 1 win to become bowl eligible. They don't want to miss the bowl season entirely, man. Even though I know they're coming off getting into the championship game last year, but I don't think they had higher aspirations this year just because this is an entirely new coach, basically an entirely new team for Washington. So I don't think they realistically thought they were going to do that again. But they want the bowl eligibility, in my opinion. And this is the game they're going to have to do it because their last game is at Oregon. So it's probably not going to happen in that game. So they need to win this game for bowl eligibility. So I think that's a big motivator. So I lean to the Washington side mainly for that reason. Whereas UCLA, yeah, I mean, they do still need it as well, kind of, to become bowl eligible as well. But Washington, it's right there for the taking, and it comes down to this. They need this game to do it because they're not going to win their next game. So lean to Washington and slightly into the under, and then this ugly Houston-Arizona game to close it out. Arizona's down from 2.5 to 1.5 with juice. 68% of tickets on them, 69% of the cash over on the other side on Houston. The public on Arizona still, as ugly as they've looked so far, doesn't totally make sense to me. It looks like the money is moving in the other direction. Market indicators on the Houston side, I'm not sure I necessarily want to take it or necessarily agree with it. Totals up from 43.5 to 46, juice to the over. 97% of the tickets on the over, though, and 87% of the cash on the over. It's like the public is still thinking this is that Arizona offense that was scoring a ton last year, but their offense has been miserable recently this year, man. So I don't agree with that. I actually like the under in this one, and maybe more so than in the other ones. I think maybe in the Wyoming-Colorado State game and then this one, it makes the most sense. Because this is a Houston team. Their offense is really bad, and Arizona's defense is actually the better defense. So maybe I would lean to Arizona for that reason. In Houston, they're coming out beating Kansas State and Utah, man. Although Utah's been a mess without Cam Rising. That's still a physical defense, and then that's a nice upset over Kansas State. And they went into a bye off of that. That bye might hurt Houston, man. It might be more of a momentum stopper coming off of that, and that was a big win. And up next, they do have Baylor, who's a Texas rival at the very least, and then BYU to close it out. So it looks maybe a little bit of a sandwich for Houston, but if they want to make a bowl this year, they need 2 wins, man. So they will need this game for that reason too, because they're probably eyeing this and thinking, we're not going to beat BYU, so we need these next 2 games to become bowl eligible. So for that one reason, I think Houston still might show up in this game. Both teams may show up just because it's a primetime game as well. And Arizona, they're dead. I mean, they're not going to win out, most likely. Probably not. To become bowl eligible, it's probably not going to happen. They've faced a pretty difficult recent schedule, but they're also coming out of a bye, and they went into that bye on a real bad note, getting blown out by UCF. So I expect Arizona to be the team to use the bye more effectively and turn it around and play better coming into this game against Houston. So I think the bye is going to be more advantageous to Arizona. So slight lean actually against the market read here and to the Arizona side. Arizona, I mean, if anything is going to motivate them, it's going to be this prime time home game here on FS1, Fox Sports 1. They'll show up and not want to get embarrassed again in a prime time game. And because they got so embarrassed in their last game, I actually think the Arizona side makes more sense in this one. And maybe the way to actually look at this game more so than the total. Not playing that one, but that's how I look at all those games. That's going to do it for me, man. So once again, my plays today in college basketball, UNC-Wilmington -8.5, Penn +8, Maryland -1.5, NBA Washington +9. Please help me. And NHL Calgary +110. I'm Tower Gang Toad. You can follow me on Twitter. Follow the Tower Gang Podcast. Subscribe to the Patreon, patreon.com/Tower Gang. And enjoy our offensive humor, man. If you subscribe to the Patreon, you get bonus content, pre-show, post-show, and get a Telegram to hang out with us in. I will be back tonight. Tonight I'm going to be on the Swamp Creatures podcast arguing with everybody about the election because I'm going to be up against a bunch of the gays in the libertarian sphere who are not correct on this. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And then tonight I will come out with my college football Saturday show as usual. So come hang out tonight, man, on those shows that I'm going to be on. That's going to do it for me. Peace out.